So President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to host Portuguese President Marcelo Rebelo De Sousa at the Union buildings today. South Africa and Portugal have well-established trade relations and maintain friendly political relations as well. There are approximately 500,000 South Africans of Portuguese descent. SABC News reporter Samkele Maseko and video journalist Herbert Memela are covering the story. Let's cross to them live now. Samkele, a good morning to you. I think we can certainly talk about the significance of this state visit. But also, I imagine, quite a program ahead for the two leaders as well.
Indeed, Naledi, it's quite a program, a jam-packed one for the two presidents of Portugal, President Marcelo Rebelo De Sousa and President Cyril Ramaphosa. You'd look at the trade relations between these two countries, particularly in 2021, the trade relations in favor of South Africa, of the exports we send to Portugal, they stand at about 2.8 billion rands, and the imports from Portugal stand at about 4.6 billion rands. You can clearly see that the trade relations between these two countries is largely skewed in the favor of Portugal. And you also look at 50% of South Africa's exports to Portugal are centralized around food production in the country, which speaks about the agricultural sector of South Africa, whether it be citrus, whether it be maize, which speaks about how the Minister Thokoti Diza will also be very central to these discussions that will take place here at the Union buildings today when those agreements of trade and cooperation are signed. One of the key factors that will be discussed in this state visit of President Marcelo to President Cyril Ramaphosa at the Union buildings will be looking at the ocean economy, will be looking at agriculture, will be looking at science and technology, which are some of the areas that South Africa wants to further explore and have some meaningful impact, particularly when you look at the oceans economy, which was pioneered during the era of former President Jacob Zuma. The last state visit was undertaken by Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Alvin Boetes, to Portugal, where these issues of trade relations were discussed, Naledi.
Yeah, I think what we have seen in recent weeks, Samkele, when we have seen these state visits, and we really have this year, I think, seen quite a lot of them. A big talking point has also been South Africa's position, really, in that balancing act that we're trying to do in the war between Russia and Ukraine. Is that likely to be a big talking point here as well?
It will definitely be a big talking point in these discussions, knowing very well that the Egyptian president yesterday evening held discussions with other African presidents, the 6 other African presidents who are part of the peacekeeping mission, an envoy that will be going to Russia and Ukraine to engage with President Zelensky, engage with President Vladimir Putin on trying to find a meaningful resolution to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. That trip was evidently meant to take place this week. It was pushed back by about a week to mid-June, if one may say so, which speaks about the necessity and the importance of resolving this particular crisis. Just yesterday, that particular meeting taking place of the African presidents planning their mission to go to Russia and Ukraine in order to try and find a meaningful solution, and also the issue of how it's having a dent in the South African economy and other African economies with this escalated war continuing between Russia and Ukraine. President Ramaphosa being very adamant that South Africa, Egypt and other African countries, Zambia as well, with President of Zambia, saying that it is very important to find a resolution of this Russia and Ukraine war because it is having an adverse effect on the African economy. The president of the African Union as well forming part of those discussions that took place yesterday evening, trying to plan and find a meaningful resolution and trying also to find the collaborative words that the African delegation will be taking to Russia and Ukraine to find that meaningful resolution to that Russia-Ukraine war. But also, it is having a huge impact and is affecting the price of food on the African continent. As you know, that Russia is one of the biggest exporters of maize in the world, but also South Africa taking a non-aligned position in this Russia and Ukraine war, which in some sort of way has had an adverse effect on the South African economy. You're looking at the trading of the rand to the dollar. It's sitting at about 19 rands 46 cents at some point last week, meaning that the South African economy and the rand was not performing very well when it was juxtaposed against other currencies of the world. The president adamant that they will not take any aligned position when it comes to this Russia and Ukraine war. As a matter of fact, the issue of President Vladimir Putin and the warrant of arrest against him will be an issue that will be certainly discussed when these two heads of state have their one-on-one engagement, and how South Africa will go about resolving this conundrum and quagmire it finds itself in, of having to be and to enforce the Rome Statute as being a signatory in arresting President Vladimir Putin. The government has said that it would be very catastrophic for the government of South Africa to arrest a sitting head of state.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly is a lot for them to discuss, the two presidents there, particularly where our economy is concerned. South Africa exporting to Portugal in 2021, valuing at 2.8 billion rand, while imports from Portugal valued at 4.6 billion rand. So certainly an important trade partner. Samkele, where are we now in the proceedings? I know that when we have these state visits, a big part of it, of course, is the pomp and ceremony beforehand.
Now, lady, the program has not yet started. None of the ministers have yet to arrive. I'll ask my colleagues just to show you some of the visuals here at the Union buildings. It's not yet a hive of activity. We've got a few of our colleagues and those who work within the Union buildings and those who are within the South African National Defence Force who are getting ready for the state visit. We do anticipate that ministers will start coming in at about 10 o'clock this morning, with the proceedings set to begin at about 11 o'clock. But key and most important of this state visit will be the trade relations between the two countries, the oceans economy, agriculture, knowing that 50% of South Africa's exports to Portugal are centralized around the agricultural sector. So the person to engage with the most in this state visit will definitely be the two ministers of agriculture, and in particular the Minister of Agriculture in South Africa, Thogo Didiza, and knowing that the role of the agricultural sector in the trade relations and the exports to Portugal centralized around agriculture and also the oceans economy. The Minister of Fisheries is going to be very important as well, whom will be engaging on that aspect of South Africa trying to explore having that oceans economy up and running.
All right. Yeah, Samkele, thank you so much for that. And I suppose just after 10 o'clock, once those proceedings do kick off, we'll come back to you for those live visuals and you can talk us through as well what we're seeing. Senior reporter Samkele Maseko speaking to us there at the Union buildings.